Well, hello there. I'm Dr. Avis Williams, and I am the CEO of the Joyful Collaborative LLC, and this is a prescription for joy. It's a podcast, but I'm reframing it as a joy cast because it's all about just thinking about how we can lean into our joy. And as always, I have an amazing guest here with me. I have Lesley Bruinton, who is a phenomenal PR expert. And we're going to bring her on and get to some deep questions and some learning from her in just a moment. But I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for being here, for listening and watching a prescription for joy. And know that you can find us on my YouTube channel, The Joyful Collab, and of course, we'll be adding some other ways to connect as we move forward. I oftentimes say that this is about making sure that leaders know that joy is a good thing. And when I say leaders, and I've said this over and over again, I use the term leader loosely because I don't care if you're leading at your household, as a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, within your Sunday school classes, whatever it is that you're doing, own that space, but own it with joy. And a prescription for joy is really just built to help all of us be able to do that. So, with that said, hey, Leslie,
Hi, Avis. It's good to
how
be
are
here.
you?
I'm good. It's good to see you again. Always
It's good
good.
to see you too. So Leslie is the CEO and owner of School Spirit PR. And as I mentioned, she is a school PR, well, actually just a PR period, in terms of marketing, in terms of public relations, all the things. She is just a guru. So thank you
Thank you.
so much for taking some time to spend with me. And I know we're going to get into some stories and so forth as we move forward. But I want to just dive right in because, with the work that you do, I know every day doesn't look the same. And especially when you're supporting a school district, because things happen, right? And so my first question is about crisis. In times of crisis or challenging situations, what are the key elements of an effective and positive communication strategy that CEOs or school leaders or any organization could use?
I think trust and transparency are what I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
default to, as
Mm-hmm.
work for someone who works with school systems and has worked in a school system. This work is largely funded on the backs of taxpayers, and they are
Mm-hmm.
owed the respect of trust and transparency. And that can
Yeah.
be difficult sometimes in school
Mhm.
systems. Just the hierarchical structure of how a school is formulated, we are taught from a very early age we don't challenge authority. The teacher's right,
Right.
or the principal's right. And so in
Mm-hmm.
this particular case, our bosses are the community at large that
Yeah.
are giving tax dollars, whether it's through
Yep.
property tax or sales tax or car tags. They
Mm-hmm.
are owed that respect of being truthful and transparent.
Yeah.
I wish I could say it's a default for everyone. It's not
Yeah.
always, and when it's not, we learn about those instances in the media. So,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what's going on in a school leader's environment,
Mm-hmm.
default to truth, being trustworthy and being truthful. Tell what you
Mm-hmm.
know as soon as you
Yeah.
can know it. The
Yeah.
information that you're able to tell. We're not always able
Gotcha.
to share all information, but what we can
Absolutely.
share, do share it.
That makes sense. When I was in Selma as superintendent, we had a school shooting, and it was a very scary moment. And families needed to know what was going on, right? Because their children were texting them, and they were hearing things through social media and so forth. And I love what you said about trust and transparency. And the thing I like about that is that it's not something that you can build in that moment, right? That's what the relationship is all about, moving on, moving throughout your career or throughout your time in that space. You cannot wait until a crisis to start building relationships and developing trust, and that transparency piece as well. So yeah, I definitely think it should be a default for everyone, but like you said, I know it's not always, and especially in a time of crisis, sometimes we're not able to think through that in the way that we need to, which is why strategic planning, strategic communication planning is so important, right?
I would
So,
say, too, one thing that you could look at if you're not sure how to answer the
hmm
question in the moment of crisis is refer back to your school system's mission or
Okay.
vision statements or their core
Yeah.
beliefs.
Yeah.
Those usually tell you how you, on a good day, how you're going to
Mm-hmm.
interact with your community, and it
Mm-hmm.
should serve as a guiding light for you. So as you are crafting those messages that you're about to send out,
Yeah.
wash them through those core beliefs, those mission statements, the value statements that you've published. Because
Mm-hmm.
really, when something happens, your community is going to be looking back to those places to see if you
Mm-hmm.
lived up to them. So
Right. Did
before
we
you
do what
send it
we
out the
said we
door,
were going to do?
exactly. So before you send those messages out the door, wash
Mm-hmm.
them through those core beliefs, those mission statements, those vision statements, to
Gotcha.
see if they'll align.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And, I know one of the things that we talk about in leadership is making sure that we are telling our own story, sharing our own narrative. And many leaders struggle with shaping their personal and professional narrative. And I'm having some challenges with that right now. I recently left a job as superintendent, and, it has not been positive in terms of some of the things that have been pushed out. And so and you've been a great advisor and thought partner for me to think about, how do I take control of this and shift my narrative? But what advice do you have for leaders who want to take control of their own story and share it in a way that's authentic and with confidence?
That's a great question. I think part of it is understanding what platforms give you joy, bring you joy, and you have
Mm,
comfort. So don't
mm-hmm.
choose a platform that's going to feel drudgery. So if
Yeah.
you are having an issue with your reputation, your personal, professional reputation,
Mm-hmm.
hopping on a social media platform that's going to feel like homework is not what I would advise. So wherever
Gotcha.
you can be authentic, if that's
Mm-hmm.
writing for you, start a blog. If that's on Facebook, be on Facebook. But whatever you do, you want to commit to it. It cannot
Mm-hmm.
be a hit and miss
Mm.
type of opportunity.
Yeah.
Avis, I know that you like to work out. So in the
Mm-hmm.
same way that you get no results if you don't work out on a regular
Yeah.
basis, you've got to put in the work for your reputation.
Yeah.
On the
And
professional
consistently.
and consistency. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So on the professional side, we talked a little bit earlier. If your school system lands itself in a crisis, you can't just wait till the crisis hits to respond. You've got
Mm-hmm.
to be putting chips into the hopper all along the way, telling the
Right.
positive stories and being unafraid to show up when the story is less than positive.
Yeah. And if you do that consistently, it really does make a difference when you're having to deal with a crisis or deliver bad news, because people feel that they can trust you, and they're not going to be as quick to be angry or frustrated with you as the messenger, even though the situation may be frustrating. So that's
Well,
very
the
good. So you were,
the
go
other
ahead.
thing
I'm
that
sorry.
you'll do is build brand ambassadors with that. So as you are
Ah.
communicating in a consistent way on your
Mm-hmm.
channel of choice,
Mm-hmm.
the people who are following you will see this. They will learn who you are, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
organizationally or personally,
Mm-hmm.
and be willing to vouch for you.
Yeah.
The most interesting thing, I was around a group of school leaders earlier this week, and there was a conversation, should we shut off the comments on Facebook? You see that a lot. There are lots of reasons
Yeah.
for and against that. We won't get in that today. But one of the comments that they brought up was that their community really rallied behind the school system because they had
Yeah.
seen its core beliefs in action and were able
Okay.
to validate the work of the school system on that
Mm-hmm.
preferred social media channel. So it wasn't
Yeah.
the school system standing up and saying, no, 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 we didn't. But what we really meant was it was
Right.
the community saying, we've watched this school system all along. We've watched
Yeah.
this leader, and this is how they lead.
Yeah. Okay. That makes perfect sense, and that really is a great segue to the next thing I want to discuss, which is social media. And we know it's evolved a lot over the years, but it's still an important tool and a powerful tool for leaders. So, what strategies can leaders use? This is school leaders, CEOs, whomever, to build and elevate their brand while maintaining trust and credibility.
I like that question. So, one thing is choosing your channel wisely, building a
Mm-hmm.
community there, and letting
Mm-hmm.
your community know that you're going to be there.
Ah,
If you're hit or miss, then they fall off. And so,
yeah.
Avis, what you're really talking about is building a brand and building a
Mm-hmm.
community. In order to do
Yeah.
that, you've got to gain followers. So, how do
Yeah.
you do that?
Yeah.
posting valuable information that
Mm-hmm.
adds value to someone else's life or their
Right.
leadership on a
Mm-hmm.
regular basis, and doing it in a way where it comes to the point where they're not just waiting for the algorithm to drop it into their feed. They might
Mm-hmm.
seek it out.
Right, right. That's a good point because it doesn't need to be just something that people happen upon. And because if you have committed followers, they're waiting, especially if they know that, oh, it's coming at 10 o'clock on Friday or whatever the case may be. And the consistency piece, because I know for me personally, I think I've fallen off a little bit on X. And when I was tweeting, I used to have one of my avisms was I tweet, therefore I am.
I hear you. Well, I mean, and it could very well be that you made a strategic abandonment away from X, and there
Yeah,
are a lot of leaders and brands who've made a
yeah,
strategic abandonment from X, and that's
yeah,
okay. But you've
yeah.
got to find, it might be that in this era that you are slimming down where you're going to be, what you're
Mm-hmm.
going to say, and to whom you're
Yeah.
saying it, and that's
Yeah.
okay. That's very
Yeah.
much that's
Thank you
very
for
much a
that.
strategic decision to make.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, as the owner of School Spirit PR, you are a brilliant businesswoman, and I know you've helped many organizations navigate communication challenges. And I know sometimes it's under stress. We talked about crisis communication, but can you share a success story where there was just positive messaging that made a significant impact during a difficult time?
Yeah, I'm thinking of a district that when I first started working with them, one of the things I like to do when I start working, I pull your media mentions.
Okay.
How often are you in the media? And before I started working with them, I think in the 2 years prior to working with them, they had about 6 media stories because they're a
Mm-hmm.
small district.
Yeah.
And over time, as we began our partnership, they ended up with some media coverage that they didn't necessarily want. It was media attention they didn't want. It was a crisis.
Yeah.
And then by being transparent, by being
Mm-hmm.
accessible and available to those reporters, they
Yep.
started calling and saying, "Hey, what else do you have? What other stories
Mm-hmm.
do you have?"
Mm-hmm.
And we did that. We built that relationship building when the times were tough, when
Gotcha.
we didn't necessarily want to talk to the reporter friends, but
Right.
they came calling
Right.
anyway. But they saw that we were willing to answer their questions in
Mm-hmm.
transparency, and they started checking in to see if you
Okay.
had any news stories, or we would
Yeah.
send news stories. And the crazy thing about this is I did a content analysis to see where we were, where we
Mm-hmm.
are. There came to be a period of time where that school system had garnered about 50 news stories in a 2 month period. Not all of them were
Wow.
positive, some
Yeah.
were negative, but it just
Yeah.
goes to show you 2 years and 6 stories to 2 months and 50 stories. And I
Right.
think the success is that they were equipped to handle the media attention
Mm-hmm.
when it came, and we weren't going to
Mm-hmm.
be rocked by it just because it was not a story we preferred. There
Gotcha.
is an ebb and flow to media coverage, and
Mm-hmm.
today you're on the front page for something you
Yep.
don't want to be, and tomorrow someone else is, and you breathe a sigh of
Right.
relief. So, how do you
Yeah.
handle that?
That's true. Yeah, but I love that though because that volume and that presence can help just completely change the trajectory, and especially when you're trying to connect with communities and building that trust and credibility when they can see the good and the bad. I mean, the point that you made. I mean, with the number of stories that were being pushed out, of course there were going to be some that would be critical, but at least there was more, which means that gives the community a better opportunity to know what you're doing, know who you are, and especially if you're talking about a school system, to know who's taking care of their children.
Right.
Yep.
So prior to doing this work, I was a television reporter, and every
Yes.
morning we had to go and pitch stories to our boss, and they
Mm-hmm.
had a piece of paper where we could jot our stories down, and at the top of the paper the news director always wrote, "Tell me a story." But his mantra that he spoke to all the time was holding the
Mm-hmm.
powerful accountable. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the role of the media. And
Yeah.
regardless of your personal, take on the media,
Yeah.
I my belief is that the media should not be a lapdog or an attack dog, but it is a
Mm.
watchdog. It should
Yeah.
stay in the
Yeah.
middle. And so what does that mean for the media to be a watchdog? It means that we have an opportunity to be very transparent in our dealings. And that starts with something as simple as answering the phone call, answering the email. I
Yeah.
see you looking like that. That means that there's probably been a time or two where you
Yeah.
made a decision. I'm not fooling with these folks today.
And so, not so much making the decision not to, but doing so in a way that I was just like dreading it.
But this
you
is,
know?
Avis, this is one of those opportunities that showing up scores you points.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so, like, we say that in school a lot of times where, we don't want to just hand out participation trophies. But in this
Hmm.
particular case, when you're dealing with the media, showing up scores you points, being
Yeah.
willing to take the
Yeah.
hard knocks and answer
Hmm.
the questions. And even if you have to say, I'm limited in what I can say, but here's what I can tell
Hmm.
you,
Yeah.
goes a long
Yeah.
way to building that relationship with a very key stakeholder partner for school
Yeah.
systems. And that's the
Because
media.
saying nothing, it gives room for that space to be filled with something, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, your detractors can very easily step in and tell the media,
Yeah.
hey, I'm willing to talk. So if the school system is not willing or able to talk, but a detractor who doesn't turn down a media opportunity does, when the story is presented, what does that show about the school system? The school
Yeah.
system won't, but the person that's the detractor does. And
Right.
I'm not willing to allow someone else to tell my story.
My story, yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. It does. It really does. So I've mentioned that you're a busy professional. You're also a wife, a mother, and a cheer mom. And notice I said mother and cheer mom because
Yeah.
those are two different people.
Yeah, and I have a boy that plays sports too. So cheer
Oh, you're a
mom
sports.
versus
See,
sports
yeah,
mom,
yes.
totally different.
And yes, and so I know that that you have to find the time to take care of yourself, right? And so with that being said, and with all the activities that you're involved in and trying to balance everything, how are you taking care of yourself?
I want to thank you for calling attention to that. I could be doing more of that. One of the things, and especially in this day and age when so many people work in remote based
Yeah.
businesses and you can just go, 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 go. When I worked in an office, a physical office that I was driving to every day, I had that car ride home as part of my decompression space.
Yeah.
And so I don't have that car ride home as part of my
Right.
decompression space. So that does greatly affects me. I like to read. And
Hmm.
I'm finding in this new era that I value peace and quiet.
I
And
love it.
so, whatever the peace and quiet may be, it could be sitting in my car after getting doing groceries. It
Yeah.
could be going for a hike. I really discovered this last fall, and I'm ready for the weather to warm up and stop being so rainy, so it's not muddy. That I
Yes.
can just kind of get into nature and just be in my own head.
Yeah.
What I find is that when I'm able to remove those distractions, I get some of my best, most creative ideas because
Yeah.
my mind is free and it can wander.
Yes.
And that's my
Yeah.
happy place.
That's good. Yeah, I love what you just said about your mind being free when you can decompress.
Yeah.
Leslie and I worked together in Tuscaloosa City Schools, and I did my first and only marathon while I was there, full marathon, and which makes me a marathoner. Let's just be
Of
clear,
course.
okay?
Well, I'm not. So
but
by nature of this conversation, you're the only marathoner in the room.
I'm the only marathoner in
There
the
you
room.
go.
Okay.
Brand
Yeah, but
yourself.
one of the things that I used to joke with my team about is I did my best thinking when I would run, and they were like, "Oh man, she ran 12 miles." And the best thinking meant that we've got some things to do, right? But it's really true, and getting out in nature makes a big difference too. So I love that the hiking that you mentioned, and even just a small amount of time when you're thinking about commuting, even if you don't have a long commute, sometimes even just that time is enough for you to reset and shift from what you were doing to what you're going to do.
Well,
Um,
I think too, some of it as busy professionals, we wrap so much of who we are around what we do.
Absolutely.
And I don't want, that's not going to go on my epithet. I
Yeah.
want my kids to say something more about me than mom worked a lot.
Yeah.
I want to
Right.
be invested and involved in the conversations of those
Yeah.
people that mean a lot around me. And one of the things I have done, which I never would have thought that I would have done this because I guess I kind of saw myself as a workaholic, but I really step away from emails and work on the weekend. I might kind of sporadically check emails, but I'm not sitting down and doing a couple of hours of work. I really try to make a point to turn off so that I can reboot. If we never turn off, then, we don't get that opportunity to reboot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true, and it's very necessary. This is called a prescription for joy, and part of that absolutely means taking care of yourself and being intentional about it.
Well,
So thank you for
not
sharing that.
only that, but it makes me a more interesting person because you don't want to
Yes,
talk to me about work all the time. You want to know
right. It's
about
like please,
other
please have
things.
another discussion topic.
Yes. So we have other things to talk about when I have other things, other experiences I can bring to the table
Right.
and
That's
share. It
right.
makes me much more interesting. And as a leader, which I've heard you mention before, your staff, your team needs to know that you are a whole person, a full
A whole
person. You can be
person. Yeah.
invested in what's going on in their life
Yeah.
beyond just work, and
Yeah.
that your expectations from them are to bring their full selves to work, to do that best work.
Right. Absolutely. Say that part about expectations one more time. So,
I think that as a leader, we need to create expectations of our teams that, they bring their whole selves to work, but we
yeah,
model
that's
that by
right.
bringing
Yeah.
our whole selves to work. So,
Yeah.
if my team thinks that I do nothing but work, they've
Yeah.
missed out on a huge chunk of me.
A huge
And
chunk of who you are, right? Yep.
and I want to know what they're doing in their lives. I mean,
That's right.
everybody can
Absolutely.
have the part that they want to keep quiet about their
That's
lives, but
right. Yep.
I want my team to know that I value them more than just the work they bring
The
to the
work that they
table.
do. Yep. That's good. I love that. I love that. And so I always like to wrap up with a call to action. And when we think about the work that we do, there's a point where it's like, okay, we can talk about what it looks like, but what are we going to do? So what is your call to actions for leaders in the field who are grappling with communicating their mission and embracing their own core values, and especially during this time where there are so many polarizing issues out there?
I'm going to challenge people to find a post-it note, find a index card, and write down your mission statement as far as
Yeah.
communication. And it might harken back to your district's core values and beliefs. But I'm thinking about an index card that I kept for many, many years after the pandemic, and I still have it. Looked at
Hmm.
it this morning, as a matter of fact, and I wrote it down during the pandemic. I
Hmm.
wanted to under promise and over deliver daily. And
Ah.
so I put this little index card right underneath my computer so that I could see it when I sat down at my desk every day.
Yeah.
So if your goal is a communications goal, a productivity goal, or whatever
Hmm.
it may be, write down that one sentence. And I'm going to restrict you to
One
the index
sentence.
card or the post-it note because this is not a manifesto. This should be
Right.
something that you can quickly and
Right.
succinctly say and do
Yep.
and be held accountable by. So
Hmm. Oh, that
if
makes
the
sense. Keep it
words,
short and simple.
yep, if the words trust and transparency are
Hmm.
in your core beliefs, then be transparent with stakeholders.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for dropping all of this knowledge and sharing, and for your time, because I know that you could be spending your time doing many, many other things, and I'm really grateful that you spent some time with me and with us on a prescription for joy. But before we wrap up, tell people a little bit more about School Spirit PR and how they can get a hold of you.
Well, School Spirit PR is a strategic communications firm, and we support school leaders. So, whether you're working with a school system, an association that serves educational partners, or other outfit, we'd love to talk to you. And we do that best by helping you to champion the good in education through strategic communication so that you can
Love it.
inspire trust, engage the community, and navigate conflict. But if you know anything about my brand, I would say it's a very joyful one. I'm all about celebrating the work that students, teachers, and support staff do daily.
That's good.
So
Yep.
that's what my company does. You can find us online at schoolspiritpr.com. We're also visible on LinkedIn. That is our platform of choice, and we'd love to connect with you there.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Leslie. I look forward to seeing you. Maybe we can get a hike in or something sometime
Oh, that
soon.
sounds fun. Let's do that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And as I wrap up, I always close with an avisism. And you all know this by now. I have avisisms. And so my avisism for today is energy is everything. Protect yours. I oftentimes talk about peace of mind and talk about mindfulness and that sort of thing. And all of that for me is based on the energy that I feel. And there are times for me when I just do not have the energy for certain things, sometimes for certain people, right? I've had situations like the situation that I spoke of earlier. People are like, "Are you mad?" And I said, "I don't have energy for that." How do I redirect my energy so that it's something more positive for me and more productive for me? But energy is everything. So protect your energy, whether that means you're making decisions about your boundaries, making decisions about your exercise or your nutrition, whatever the case may be. Protect your energy. Now, as we close, I want to again thank you all for tuning in to A Prescription for Joy. And remember to check out my website, joyfulcollab.com. Follow me on social media. I'm at Joyful Collab on YouTube as well as IG, and Dr. Avis W on X, which I'm not there as much, but but I'm still there. Feel free to DM me on any of those platforms. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love for you to be a guest on the show. So if you're interested in that, let me know as well. And I'll be sharing more ways to engage. But please subscribe to the YouTube channel at Joyful Collab and look for more ways to connect as we move forward. So thank you again, Lesley, for sharing your amazing knowledge and your time. And to everyone out there, until next time, keep thriving, keep shining, and keep choosing joy. Thanks.